Last year I built a wooden firewood rack that holds half a face cord of wood, and we ended up using the entire thing by the end of January. So that we have a supply of firewood near the back patio door, I decided to upgrade our firewood rack, making better use of the space available. And because it's my latest obsession / hobby, I decided to make it out of 3" by 3" tube steel since, hey, why not go a bit overkill? The general idea here is that it will be very similar to the previous version I built out of wood, but this one will hold about 3/4 of a face cord, and it will be designed to have a shingle roof to provide protection from rain. If you're interested, I do have plans for this firewood rack. The link is in the video description. At the advice of a friend, I've started covering this window with a welding blanket to keep the windows from getting damaged. The first step of this project is to drill a series of holes for leveling feet. These are basically 3/4" diameter bolts with matching nuts that are welded to the bottom, and that can be adjusted to account for vagaries in the walkway where this will be installed. Next is to install some end caps in the sleeper members at the bottom of the rack. These will slightly strengthen the tubes and keep critters from making a home in there. Firewood is normally cut at 16 inches long in the US, so I need to add some spacers such that the outsides of the tubes are 16 inches apart. Those tack welds didn't hold as well as I thought, so let's beef them up a little. After tacking, I check the frame for square. Before attaching the leveling feet, I grind off the mill scale around the holes I drilled. When welding close sections where there's no path for air to escape, it's a good idea to drill 1/8 inch diameter weep holes. These allow for hot air to escape the inside of the section during welding so that you don't blow out a weld. They also allow condensation to escape the inside of the tube so rust is less of a problem. Obviously, you want to drill these on the bottom part of the piece. At the corners where the uprights connect, I'll be welding in a piece of 3/16 inch thick plate to connect things. This makes welding a bit easier since the welds can be fillet welds all around instead of butt welds. And more weep holes at the bottom of the uprights. Time to weld on the leveling feet. These tabs will be placed on the top of the uprights to attach some wooden purlins, but more on that later. The uprights are two different heights from front to back to provide a slope for the roof, so orientation is important. Similar to the sleepers, the uprights need a spacer piece. At this point I realized that the end cuts on the spacer were not square, and clamping the uprights tightly to it ended up twisting the uprights. I tried to clamp the twist out to no avail, so time to cut the tack welds and start again. It was at this point that my Harbor Freight welder let the smoke out, so I went down for a month waiting for a new name brand welder to be delivered. Back up and running, I started off by cutting the roof purlins. As the rack is 5 feet wide, I cut this 10-foot 2x6 in half.
Really?
To account for the 1 in 12 roof slope, which is about 5 degrees, I set the bevel on my circular saw to that angle. In the intervening time while waiting for my new welder, I also bought a set of minion squares from Fireball Tool to help me with layout. I'm having issues with the new welder popping the breaker in my extension cord, so I ended up buying a beefier 10 gauge one to cope. Now you'll get to see the leveling feat in action. To build the thing up, I first level the base so that I know the uprights will be square to it when they are plumb. The second set of uprights goes on like the first. With all the welding done, I degreased everything and gave it a couple coats of self-etching primer. And, as is my style, I finished with a couple coats of matte black hammer-tone paint. After giving the paint a couple days to dry, and let's be honest, I didn't feel like working on it those days, I started working on the roof. I screwed the purlins down to the tabs at the tops of the uprights. At this point, it's time to move the rack to its home and finish the roof there. As this thing weighs a couple hundred pounds, I made an impromptu cart with some swivel wheels and a scrap of OSB to cart it around. The old firewood rack is going to my neighbor. One of the problems with the old rack was that I couldn't get it level, so it was a little wobbly when fully loaded with firewood. The leveling feet on the new rack, and the greater weight, negate this issue. As I have a partially used pack of 3-tab shingles in my garage, I'm adding a simple shingle roof to the top of the rack. With the rack done, all that's left to do is fill it up. I had stacked up about a face cord of wood in the backyard last spring, most of it partially split. I bought a small electric splitter this year so I don't kill myself with the splitting ball, so I spent an hour or so processing the stack of wood. Some of this is a bit twisty and knotty, so I'll deal with that with the chainsaw later. Well, now I've got 3/4 of a face cord of wood just steps from the back patio door, which will be nice and dry when winter comes. The firewood rack perfectly fits in this space beside my chimney and below the window, so I really couldn't have made it any bigger. We happened to have a rain shower come through just as I was editing this video, so I was able to take some quick shots of the roof doing its job keeping the firewood dry. Thanks for following along with this one, and hopefully this will be the last firewood rack I build for a long time. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.